These countries are quietly taking over as new global powers. Everyone is watching the wrong fight. The headlines are full of America versus China. Two superpowers, two competing visions for how the world should be organized. Every analyst, every think tank, every foreign policy podcast frames the 21st century as a replay of the Cold War. Two blocks, two sides. Pick one. But while everyone is watching those two giants circle each other, something else is happening. Something quieter, more distributed, and arguably more consequential for how the world actually functions day to day. A group of countries that nobody used to take seriously is taking over. Not through military conquest, not through ideological revolution, through something far more effective: positioning. These countries have figured out that when two superpowers are locked in a rivalry, the most powerful place to stand is not behind either of them. It is directly between them. And the countries that have mastered that position are rewriting the rules of global power in ways that Washington and Beijing are only beginning to understand. They are called middle powers, and they're the most important geopolitical story nobody is paying enough attention to. To understand what a middle power actually is, you have to start with what it is not. It is not simply a country that is medium-sized or moderately wealthy, or somewhere in the middle of every global ranking. That definition would make middle powers boring. What makes them fascinating and genuinely dangerous to established order is behavioral, not numerical. A middle power is a country with enough size, economic weight, and strategic location to matter regionally and crucially. The ambition and willingness to use that position independently, not as a proxy for Washington, not as a client for Beijing. On its own terms, in pursuit of its own agenda, playing whoever it needs to play against whoever it needs to play. That last part is the key. During the Cold War, countries like Iran under the Shah, or South Korea were what strategists call relay middle powers, regionally significant states that nevertheless operated as extensions of American foreign policy. Washington pointed, they moved. The arrangement worked for Washington. It worked less well for them. Today's middle powers have torn up that arrangement entirely. They take American weapons and Russian energy in the same breath. They join Chinese infrastructure projects while hosting American military bases. They mediate conflicts between countries that are supposed to be their allies. They refuse to vote the way they're expected to vote at the United Nations. They are, in the most precise sense of the phrase, nobody's client. And the reason they can get away with it is the rivalry itself. When there's only one superpower, defiance is punished immediately. When there are two superpowers competing for your loyalty, defiance becomes leverage. Turkey is the country that most completely embodies this new game and the one that has played it most skillfully. On paper, Turkey is a NATO member. It hosts American nuclear weapons at Incirlik Air Base. It has one of the largest standing armies in the alliance. By any conventional measure, it should be one of Washington's most reliable partners in the region. In practice, Turkey operates like a country that belongs to no one. It purchased the Russian S-400 air defense system, a move so incompatible with NATO membership that the United States kicked Turkey out of the F-35 fighter jet program entirely. It has intervened militarily in Syria, Libya, and Iraq, sometimes in alignment with Western interests, sometimes directly against them. It provided Ukraine with Bayraktar drones that proved devastatingly effective against Russian armor, while simultaneously importing Russian oil and gas and positioning itself as a mediator between Moscow and Kyiv. In 2023, Turkey held up Sweden's NATO membership for months, extracting concessions from both Washington and Stockholm before finally agreeing. A country that was supposed to be a loyal alliance member used the alliance itself as a bargaining chip. This is not recklessness, it is a strategy. Turkey understands that its geography, sitting at the intersection of Europe, the Middle East, and Central Asia, controlling the straits connecting the Black Sea to the Mediterranean, makes it indispensable to too many competing parties for any single one of them to permanently alienate it. So it plays all of them, continuously, and pockets the gains from each. Then there's the UAE, arguably the most surprising entry on the list of rising powers, and the one that best illustrates how middle power status no longer requires size. The United Arab Emirates has a citizen population of just over 1 million people. By the traditional metrics of national power, territory, demographics, military manpower, it should be a footnote in global geopolitics. Instead, it's one of the most strategically active states on the planet. The foundation of UAE power is not demographic, it is geographic and financial. Abu Dhabi sits adjacent to the Strait of Hormuz, through which roughly a fifth of the world's oil supply passes every day. It has positioned itself as the preferred neutral ground for global business, the city where Russian oligarchs, Chinese investors, Western executives, and Gulf royalty all operate in the same rooms without the political friction they would face anywhere else. And it has built DP World, a state-controlled logistics company that operates 80 port terminals across 40 countries on 6 continents, giving the UAE tangible influence over global supply chains that most countries 10 times its size could never dream of. On the question of choosing sides between America and China, the UAE's answer has been a consistent and unapologetic both. China has been its largest trading partner since 2017. It joined BRICS in 2024. It participates simultaneously in China's Belt and Road Initiative, the American-baked IMEC corridor connecting India to Europe, and a competing Turkish-Iraqi infrastructure project. It armed forces in Sudan's civil war while establishing military bases in Somalia. It maintained thriving trade with Russia throughout the Ukraine war, becoming one of the primary channels for circumventing Western sanctions. None of this contradicts itself in Abu Dhabi's strategic calculus. It is all the same policy: maximize optionality, minimize dependency, profit from everyone's need for a neutral partner. Russia presents the most uncomfortable case study of all because Russia is not a rising middle power. It is a fallen superpower that has not yet accepted what it has become. From Peter the Great to the Soviet Union, Russia spent 3 centuries as one of the defining forces in global politics. The Cold War made it one of 2 states capable of ending human civilization. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 stripped all of that away within months. Between 1991 and 1997, the Russian economy contracted by nearly half. Former Warsaw Pact allies fled toward NATO and the EU. Russia couldn't even suppress a separatist insurgency in Chechnya within its own borders. What Vladimir Putin has spent his entire time in power doing is trying to reverse that verdict. The Second Chechen War, the invasion of Georgia in 2008, the seizure of Crimea in 2014. Each step was calculated not just as territorial acquisition, but as a demonstration to the world and to Russians that Moscow was climbing back towards superpower status. The full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022 was meant to be the decisive move, a rapid conquest that would redraw the map of Europe and force both Washington and Beijing to deal with Moscow as a peer once again. As one strategist put it, without Ukraine, Russia ceases to be an empire. It didn't go as planned. Russia is now grinding through the 3rd year of a war it expected to win in 3 weeks. Its economy increasingly dependent on China, its military depleted, its global standing lower than at any point since the 1990s. The gap between Russia and the actual superpowers continues to widen. Putin keeps fighting, not just because of Ukraine, but because losing, or even failing to decisively win, would lock Russia into middle power status permanently. And that, for Moscow, is an outcome worse than the war itself. What separates the countries that are successfully rising from the ones that are stalling comes down to one factor the reference frameworks all circle back to eventually: autonomy. India has it. With 1.4 billion people, the world's 5th largest economy, and a military that can credibly defend its own territory, India refuses alignment with anyone. It buys Russian oil at a discount and sells refined products to Europe. It participates in the Quad security partnership with the US, Japan, and Australia while refusing to criticize Russia at the United Nations. It hosts American tech investment while maintaining its own domestic digital infrastructure laws that infuriate Silicon Valley. Every major power needs India. India uses that need relentlessly. Saudi Arabia has it. The kingdom that was once almost entirely dependent on American security guarantees has spent the last decade methodically diversifying. It welcomed China's mediation to restore diplomatic relations with Iran in 2023, a deal brokered in Beijing, not Washington, on one of the most sensitive regional security questions in the Middle East. It joined BRICS. It has refused multiple American requests to increase oil production. The relationship with Washington still exists, but it is no longer unconditional on Riyadh's end. Indonesia has it, a country of 280 million people sitting astride the Strait of Malacca, through which a third of global trade passes, that has maintained genuine non-alignment for decades, and is now large enough that both Washington and Beijing genuinely compete for its favor. The pattern across all of them is consistent. Size or geography provides the foundation. Economic development provides the resources. But the thing that actually elevates a country into genuine middle power status is the willingness to act independently, to absorb the friction that comes from refusing to be predictable, and the strategic sophistication to turn that unpredictability into leverage. Here's the part that should concern anyone who thought the 21st century would be more stable than the 20th. Most of these rising middle powers are not interested in preserving the existing international order. They were not the ones who designed it. They were not the primary beneficiaries of it. The institutions that govern global trade, security, and finance, the UN Security Council, the IMF, the World Bank, the web of American-led alliances were built by, and largely for, the countries that won World War II and the Cold War. The rising middle powers of the Global South look at those institutions and see a system designed to keep them at the table as guests rather than hosts. Turkey, India, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Iran, countries that between them represent well over 3 billion people, are not looking to join the existing order. They are looking to replace it with something that reflects their interests more accurately. Whether that produces a more just and stable world, or simply a more chaotic one where every regional power pursues its own agenda without constraint, is the question nobody can yet answer. What is already clear is that the answer will not be decided in Washington or Beijing alone. The countries that everyone used to ignore are making sure of that. If Turkey buying Russian weapons while staying in NATO surprised you, wait until you see what the rest of these middle powers are quietly pulling off. Subscribe. We cover the geopolitical moves that don't make the front page, but shape everything behind it.